Hello and welcome to tonight's show.
Welcome to another day in paradise and welcome to the aftermath of 4 months in Central America. Today I'm going to tell you and hopefully teach you about all the costs involved in such a trip and also what you might be able to save some money on. Let's go. To give a broad overview, we came from Germany, flew into Hawaii. There we visited 3 different islands, and in between the islands you have to take flights. Then we stopped over in San Francisco on our way to Mexico. Then from there on we traveled to Costa Rica, did a whole round trip through the country and then crossed the border to Panama by foot. Then from Panama we flew into Cuba. We spent a couple of weeks there, flew back into Panama, from where we flew then into the Dominican Republic, which was just a stopover on the way back to Germany, and that took a total of exactly 120 days. I divided the costs into 5 different categories, first of which is the flights in between countries and back and forth, and the second one is transportation. I did that in a different category, and that is like boats, scooters, rental cars, rental bikes and such, and buses just to get around in the countries. Then the third one is accommodation, so yeah, all the nights that we spent in different places. Then there is food, everything from restaurants to going to the bakery or just grocery shopping in the supermarkets. And the last one is rest category. There's like laundry, SIM cards, internet and all the small bits and pieces that come together when you spend a couple of weeks or months abroad. If you want further details, check out the playlist linked at the end of this video, because there I did how much is for each and every country, where I divided all the costs even further and told a little something about where to save money on and such for the specific country. This is more like for a broad overview to calculate the budget for yourself for a longer trip and kind of get a feeling for how much to budget it. For the flights alone, it was 5,693 euros and 79 cents. But mind you, the big flights were from Germany, so Europe, to the US,
to Hawaii. Then inside Hawaii, as I said, island hopping, there was like 2 more flights. Then the flight to San Francisco, flight to Mexico, flight to Costa Rica, Costa Rica to Panama, we did by foot, but then Panama to Cuba, Cuba back to Panama, Panama to Dominican Republic,
back to Germany, so it was 10 flights in total. For that, 5,600 was quite reasonable. We were quite flexible on times and such, so that made us save a little money. So that's the tip on flights. Try to be flexible if you can. Maybe if you can stay a day longer or shorter on a longer trip, then use those to budget down your cost for flights. And also, mind you, that is calculated for 2 people. So if you divide it by 2, we will end up on 2,846 euros and 90 cents, which is quite okay for all those flights, I guess. And calculated down to the costs per day per person, we end up on 23 euros 72 cents per day, which doesn't make too much sense for this category because you're not going to fly every day, but for the other categories it's going to make sense. And at the end we are going to break everything down and sum all those per day costs to get a price how much to budget roughly per day for your trip. Second category is transportation, and we spent a total of 5,504 euros and 48 cents on that. So that is quite hefty, but there were some rental cars that hit hard on that, because on Hawaii it was really expensive to rent a car, and same goes for Costa Rica. We had the car for I don't know, for a longer while, and that was a huge part of that. Buses in Mexico was really cheap. Buses in Panama, that was like that was really cool. And transportation in Cuba was so and so, like taxis from place to place were quite expensive, but the rest buses were like really cheap. So it always depends on where you are and which means of transportation you are willing to take, and if you got a choice. Like if you have to take a boat to get to Bocas del Toro, for example, there is no way around that. You have to take that boat because there's only like a couple of companies and they all charge the same. So you have to pay that if you want to go there. And that's the lesson for most of this. Go budget if you want to, if you have to, but on the other hand, don't miss out on experiences just because a couple of dollars. Like to Bocas del Toro, it was like I think $10 or $20 per person, and that was money well spent. For the rental cars, it makes you flexible, but it will cost you a lot of money, so you have to decide either one is more important and worthy for you. And if you want to go places that are hard to reach by bus and such, so you have to take a car. Or if you're like easy on days, if you're like I have enough time but not enough money, then you can save a lot of money by taking a bus, or maybe go hitchhiking or stuff like that, and maybe skip on renting something. So that's always up to you and your kind and style of travel. But yeah, some ideas just to avoid some costs and maybe get around that, and also some encouragement for you to maybe don't always take spending money too serious on the other hand. We are breaking those costs down again to per person per day, and that's 22 euros and 94 cents, which is quite reasonable. I was kind of surprised that it was that low. And we traveled around a lot. We circled whole Yucatan Peninsula, we circled all the Hawaiian Islands, we also did the whole Costa Rica round trip through the whole country. So for that, and also we traveled through all of Panama, so I guess 22 euros per day is absolutely fine. Next one is accommodation, and that is 9,314 euros and 16 cents. Ouch! But on the other hand, if we break it down, we end up on 38 euros and 81 cents per day or per night, which is quite alright. And that is due to the two people. So if you go on yourself, you will pay more money, obviously, because you can't divide those costs by two. Could save some money on that by going into hostel, stuff like that. You could spend way more if you go like in high-end resorts and stuff like that. We mostly went on budget on the accommodations. On Hawaii, that was kind of hard because everything was crazy expensive. But yeah, as I said, under $40 per night in average, that's okay. The total sum, that is mind-boggling and it's kind of scary, but in total, for me, that's totally fine. Maybe leave a comment down below what's your average price for accommodations when you're searching online. I'm mostly looking on Airbnb and booking.com and stuff like that, and there you can put in a filter for how much you're willing to spend. Let me know what's your filter max is, or if there's no max to you, depending on the country, I guess, again, but yeah, no worries. Just leave it down below. And if you're down there already, maybe leave a like as well. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for more adventures to come and more knowledge to learn. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next one, which is an absolute necessity. That's food. And we spent a total of 3,046 euros and 70 cents on that. That already sounds quite low, and if you break it down to per person per day, it's $12.69 per day per person, which is surprisingly low. We cooked a lot for ourselves if possible, and a lot of those country food is quite cheap there. Hawaii is not, but there we cooked for ourselves all the time to save some money. And that's another lesson to learn maybe. For me, I absolutely fancy and value good and healthy food, and I like to have that cheap. And then I guess the only option is to cook for yourself. And so always when I'm looking for accommodations, I'm almost always looking for something having a kitchen, so I have the option to cook for myself, because I will be better off with that, and I prefer that absolutely. Then you will spend maybe more on an accommodation because it has a kitchen. Most of the times it doesn't make a real difference in prices for the accommodation, but you might save a lot of money on food. Or if you're more like, nah, I want to be a foodie, I want to test local foods, that's included in that as well. We always try to get some local food to get the experience as well. And if you say, nah, I'm way too lazy to cook in holidays for myself, I guess that's maybe also a different for those long-term trips. As you spend more time abroad, it's easier to say, okay, I'm going to cook for myself every now and then at least, but going to a restaurant each and every single day. Maybe leave in the comments below as well if you going to restaurants when you're back home. I barely do that, so it's not like a switch when I'm on vacations or a trip. And we move on to the surprise category, because I forgot it in the intro, and that's activities. And we spent a lot of money on that, and it was 4,097 euros and 7 cents. Whoa, just for activities. But on the other hand, in my opinion, I'm not going to go to Hawaii again, I guess, in my lifetime. So I had to go on the helicopter ride and circle it. I might never ever go back to Panama again, so I had to go diving in Coiba National Park, and that was pricey, but it's okay. I am never ever going to, maybe I'm going to dive with bull sharks again. That was pricey, whoa, but it was worth it. And I guess especially for this category, that's really important to always make sure. I don't remember most of the price. I don't know how much the helicopter flight was, but I remember whom I was on it with, and I remember the fun I had and how thrilling it was, and the big grin and smile on my face when I got off the helicopter. And that's going to stay in here and on YouTube forever, and that was worth the money totally. I earned it back by now, so I forgot about the price tag, but I will never forget about the experience. So go easy on that category and just treat yourself with something good, and that might come down to 70 euros and 7 cents per day. And if you break it down like that, that sounds quite alright again, especially like I said, considering that we did something each and every single day. Some activities were for free, like if you go to most beaches, that's going to be for free, and you can hang around there for free all day long. Or if you do some hikes, most of them will be for free. So you can do activities which are quite cheap or which are for free, but there will be some that are expensive, and in average that's going to be alright. So treat yourself from time to time and do fun stuff on the other days as well. Last category, as I said, is the rest category, and that comes down to 686 euros and 69 cents, which is 2 euros and 86 cents per day. Again, quite alright, I guess, especially considering that we got a SIM card in each and every country and had internet, really good internet all the time. And yeah, we didn't do laundry too often. That's another one for the accommodation part. If you can find an accommodation that has a laundry machine anyway, maybe book that one rather than having to go to the laundromat or something like that. They are quite expensive expensive for my feelings in Central America, because I'm used to the prices in Southeast Asia, and there I would always just go somewhere, get my laundry done, then it's folded, it's fresh, it's nice, way easier. So I would prefer that. But yeah, if you're in a country where that's more expensive, that's a good option. That leaves us with two options. Either you already calculated by yourself, then I'm quite impressed, or you didn't do that, and then I'm going to tell you how much that is in total, mind you, 120 days spent. That's 27,202 euros and 93 cents. That is a lot of money. Did it worth it? For me, in my experiences and everything that I got from that trip, I would say yes, it was worth it. I might never ever do something like that again. I might try and I might give it all to make it possible. So make sure to stay around with your subscription to check in on that as well. Maybe I'm going to make a video about all the things I do to try to do it again. So maybe let me know down below if you're interested in that as well. And also in the next video I'm going to tell you everything that I learned about the trip and what you have to consider, all the do's and don'ts, all tips and tricks like I did on all the single other videos of all those countries as well. I'm going to do that for a long trip. So today we are just talking money, but then we are going to talk about things to learn from such a trip or for you to consider before planning. Now we're going to break that down, and that was 113 euros and 36 cents per day, which sounds quite a lot, and it is, but as I said, for me it was worth it. I hope this helps you calculate a little, especially when you go in this region and those countries, which weren't like cheap countries, none of them really were. But if you go to, like I said, Southeast Asia, you're going to end up on maybe half of the sum, and so it's going to be a different talk. But for me, this should also give you a feeling on how to calculate and maybe how to lower some costs and what to consider when planning a trip. Sometimes you forgot about laundry, or you forget about, I don't know, activities, or like I said, your feeling is more like, no, I'm going to save money on that, and then maybe this video helps you to not do that and say, once in a lifetime, let's do this. Money is going to come back sooner or later. It's going to be fine. So now you might be thinking, wait a minute, that's only money spent abroad. And you're absolutely right. I didn't write down the cost that we had to spend prior, like vaccinations. There was money to consider as well, but I think that's quite individually, like depending on which vax you already have, depending on the region where you go, which ones you will need and which are not necessary. We also had to keep paying the rent for our house, so that was a monthly cost that was still going all the time. There was quite a hefty price tag on top of that one abroad. Then there were prices for insurances, especially in the case of Germany. You can, if you're away for a longer period, depending on which style of finances you have. Like I was on like a pause at work, so I didn't get any money, but I was still employed there. But as I weren't employed, my health insurance wasn't paid, which is not the biggest problem because that wouldn't have worked abroad anyways. So you could stop the health insurance, in Germany at least, for that period of time, but you have to be insured. So you can do a abroad insurance, which is like 2 to 3 euros per day, depending on which countries you're going to. If you go to US and Canada, then it's going to be 3 euros, otherwise it's 2 euros, something like that. So that was additional costs, and also you might have to have someone to look after your house, or I don't know, water your plants and stuff like that, or look after your puppy if you got one. Don't leave it alone for 4 months if you have a puppy. So those are costs that might come into play as well. So always see, okay, do I have fixed costs back home that can either be somehow reduced, like we could have rented out the house for 4 months. Consider for yourself if you are able to reduce these costs. Maybe if you're like in a in-between period from one job to another, or you might move places anyway, then just cancel your rent completely, move all your stuff somewhere, just have it stored and be away for, I don't know, 4 months, 6 months or whatever. Then you won't have to pay those rent costs, and that will save you a lot, because the rent on the go abroad might be even cheaper than the rent that you pay back home. In our cases, that is the case. We spent more money back in Germany that we spent each night over there. So that may be something to consider when planning a trip as well. Which phase am I in? Is it the right time? But I think most of the times it comes down to now or never. I got the chance now. Like I said, for me it was okay, work is willing to let me go for 4 months without firing me, so I'm taking the chance and just go for it. Let me know down below if you already did a long time trip in your life, or if you're planning on doing so, and then I hope I see you in the next video about everything else you have to consider for such a trip and all the tips and tricks. See you over there. Until then, have a good one. Enjoy your planning phase, because that's fun as well. Not the financial part, but all the where am I going to, what do I want to do. For me it was like, okay, helicopter, Hawaii is a must, and I was so excited for that. Maybe you have something for that on your own, or planning, or maybe finding something like that. I wish you luck with that. Enough talking. See ya.